Hello, I'm Jeff from the Nerd Network. Thank you for being here, first of all. We're going to do the voicing your fandom, talk about podcasting as a Trek fan. I got some people with me, and who are much cooler than I am. So, we have, first off, Subrina Wood from the SyFy Sistas. Heather Ray from Roddenberry Network. Whatever you want. Rocky Robinson from Starfleet Underground. And then the two guys who work with me, David and Phil from the Nerd Trek podcast. These two guys. So, we got about 30 minutes, so I don't know if we'll get time to a couple things I wanted to do, but catch us in the hallway afterwards. We'll do a Q&A if you want. And I got a bunch of toys and shirts and swag. So if you want some free stuff, come find me, okay? Cool. All right, so, thank you guys for doing this, first of all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so, why podcasting? What made you jump from being a fan to a content creator? Let's start with Heather.
So I started coming to this convention in 2009 and was kind of outside of the fan community. Slowly started making friends within this community and then on social media. And it just was making a connection here, doing I think it was, what are you looking forward to in the next year? And this was like 2015. What are you looking forward to in the Star Trek world? And I'm trying to think what we had going on in 2015. Not a whole lot.
Feels like so long ago.
But, you know, it was just getting together with friends and doing a podcast as a guest. And then that led to, this is really fun and like fulfilling. It makes you have the warm fuzzies when you're sitting there like talking about Star Trek with your friends. And then it turned into, I want to do this kind of podcast, Shore Leave, about STLV and other conventions. And then I want to talk about Discovery and Strange New Worlds. Just the best thing is getting to share it with your friends.
Rocky?
My turn? I've been listening to podcasts since they started, but I never thought about being one or creating one, even though I worked in radio. I'm a video editor and a camera guy. I work in the industry doing, not very big stuff, but like cable TV type programming. So podcasting kind of fits right in that alley. And then at one of the Star Trek conventions, I've only been going for like 3 or 4 years. I met somebody who, she was incredibly cute, and I had to, find out more about her, and she's just an incredible friend. Nothing romantic happened, but, what are you going to do? But I happened to end up with a podcast with this wonderful person and several of her friends. So that's kind of how our podcast started. And podcasting is great because there's no limit to it. You're not being censored by anybody, which is perfect because none of us on our podcast can censor ourselves.
That is true.
Unless we have to be, I could do it because I've been in radio. But no, we say the F word, they say the C word, they say all the words. And that's, it's fun because we get together every morning virtually over the weekends and just talk about Star Trek, which is wonderful. So.
Hi everyone, I'm Sabrina Wood, and we started our podcast as SyFy Sisters as disruptors. So it was basically we were coming to conventions, and what was going on for us was Discovery. And we were so excited about Sonequa Martin Green. We could not stop talking about Sonequa was coming, and it was going to be the thing. We'd been to this convention. We were like going to talk about her, and then we didn't talk about her, and they wouldn't let us talk about her, and we were like, I'm out of here. So we just said, that's never going to happen to us again. So we decided to do not a podcast, but we started with like just a Facebook page, and everyone was kind of like, well, you guys need to do a podcast. We were like, well, I already had a podcast, so I knew how to do one. But then I said, all right, well, we don't want to do like recap shows all the time, so what are we going to do? So we were just starting to be ourselves and talk about science fiction from a Black woman's perspective, what we see that maybe you don't see. I mean, we love Star Trek, we love it all, but we're going to call you out on this mess.
Heck yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
It's a hot mess. No. Yeah, when you get a message from your best friend and he's like, hey, I have this idea, and we're going to drag David along, who's the big Star Wars guy. Like, every show has to have a gimmick, and David is our gimmick.
Oh yeah, Jeff and I argued Star Wars versus Star Trek for a while, and then he's like, what if we just did a podcast where we watch it all, and you can try and rip it to shreds if you want, or you watch all this because I hadn't seen it.
And we're going to try and convert you. Basically.
It's like, all right. And he's like, I'm like, I've never done a podcast, neither had he. Or,
Well, he has Trek socks, so
but I think we can figure it out. So, yes, I bought my first Trek merch at my first Trek con today, or yesterday.
Yeah, for me, it was, as I grew up on TNG, it was my teenage years. You could say shut up, Wesley, but I identified with him as a scrawny teenager who was really introverted and like trying to find himself. And so my teenage years all the way now into my 40s has been Trek. So when you get a message from your best friend, it's an easy yes. And 300 episodes in, we're starting to push David there. And we got him here to Vegas.
I'm coming around.
So yeah.
I'm coming around.
Yeah.
Man, we didn't start with a message that we necessarily wanted to get out there. We were just like, all right, let's do this. We may get 3 weeks into this and decide that we don't want to do it anymore, or nobody's listening, or the times don't work out, and it just kept going and going and going.
Yeah, and it evolved into like a barroom conversation. Like, hey, we watched these couple of episodes, let's talk about them and see where it goes. And our show's kind of evolved into we go off on a lot of tangents, things that link into other things, crossovers. David is a huge Firefly guy, Green Lantern guy. That always manages to make its way in. So we're not just Trek. There's so much more out there, and so many of us have different fandoms that we're involved with. Trek may be our main, but everybody loves everything, and there's room for everything. Yeah. And so we try and show that as well.
But to answer your question, Jeff, the reason we went into podcasts is because you came to me and said, hey, let's make a podcast. And we said, okay.
We blame you for everything.
That's right. All right. Now that you have a podcast, or you've been on podcasts and you have a voice, how do you put that voice out there? What do you feel that you can make a difference with in this fandom? Whoever wants to jump in. No pressure.
For me, just bridging the gap between Star Wars and Star Trek fans, because I can now go to them and be like, this is good about this, and this is good about this, and there's good and bad in both, and some of it's great, and some of it's not so great, and you can enjoy both at the same time. I feel like it's less than it used to be, but there's still kind of a division of like, you have to pick which star you like better.
Well, but you're more than willing to call out the BS and crap on both of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's there. Oh, it's there.
About you guys.
Well, on Starfleet Underground, our podcast, we didn't decide to come out and try to do something specific. We just wanted to sit around and talk about Star Trek. And we wanted to make each other laugh. So we bring a comedy element to it, and none of us are professional comedians, so that's its own. It's like basically we kind of improvise a Mystery Science Theater skit at the beginning of every podcast, and we come up with it literally like, what are we going to talk about? Oh, we're going to do this. Okay, and then we go with it, and that's how our show starts. And then the fun thing is to add sound effects to it all later. But we don't want to bridge gaps or make anybody happy or anything. You know, we're just having fun.
I think for me, I have had to learn how to navigate sharing myself in an authentic and honest way. When you do that and you put yourself out there, you open yourself to criticism, sometimes from people that you do know, a lot of times from people that you don't know at all, and that can be really hard. So over the years, I've had to... It's important for me to put my voice out there and put out, as a non-binary person, a non-binary perspective, and things like that. And I think for me, Star Trek inspires me to be the best person that I can be. And so I try to make my podcasting experiences an extension of like what I've experienced in my life. And so I share some of my personal stories and what I've been through when I'm talking about what I've watched in Star Trek. And that is, I know, encouraged other people to then open up about like their personal traumas or personal experiences and share that. And that's how we connect with each other and build these really deep friendships. For me, podcasting is kind of like an extension of the Star Trek convention. But I think the more that we can empower each other to be our authentic selves and to be that bravely and boldly, that's what I really aspire to do with my podcasting.
Subrina, I know Subrina has plans too.
Well, what we inspire to do actually is really promote and point out maybe Black characters and stars that maybe don't get to be invited to conventions or don't get on the cruise, or maybe they're just not. You just don't know even what their backstory is, and so we just want to put a light on them. And we don't just do Star Trek. We do other shows. We're totally into For All Mankind. And we love Danielle Poole. So when we saw that show and saw that they had a Black female astronaut in this one, we have to talk to her. And she's a podcaster, so we had a great time talking to her about what we go up against when in this world of science fiction, which is really predominantly white. It's white male. Let's go. I mean, that's what it is. That we want to promote what the women are doing. We're big champions of Pressure. We're going to do the Janeway thing in a minute. I know that's your girl, Pressure. I hope. So we definitely want to show that even in the Star Trek universe, which is supposed to be so advanced, we're seeing things on that screen or in that story that's still kind of like hitting us. You're like, wait, what's up with that? So we just want to point those things out and maybe leave the writers, or even like, I want to say, this is how I feel about this. Why are you writing it like this? And, I love it, but really, did you know what you did there? And it's really been very helpful for us to get it out and let it be known. And I think a lot of people are realizing it, when they look at it our way, they're like, oh, damn, girl, you're right.
It is interesting to watch these shows. When you take a look at Enterprise, for example, and rewatch it.
Watch it.
Yeah. And I like it too. I'm all for Enterprise. But we've got a Black man who's a Marine on our show, a white guy who's gay, and then me, that's the other white guy, and a woman. And the perspectives about Archer from our woman on the show are completely like, whoa, we had no friggin' clue. And then there's also the mention of whenever they visit a planet that, look, it's all these white people.
White alien.
White alien people. Where are the black ones? Where are the purple ones? We kind of like, oh, wow. And as we relate to events in real life, when Black Lives Matters kicked off, we were just like, whoa, we talked about that stuff, and he told us stories. And we're like, wow, because, we don't get told these stories all the time.
That's what really is one of the things that motivates us. And so we have a good time doing it. I mean, but we have fun too. We have fun stuff.
Oh, it's all about fun.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah. But it's a good mix. I mean, you can have the message, because especially with Star Trek, most of the stories have a message of some kind, whether it's about capitalism or race or class or whatever. But then there's also the silly fun ones, so you can mix it in and do both. What's a lesson you've learned since doing your podcast? Whether it's just you've learned how to edit better, or being more in the community as being recognized or content creator. Are there any big lessons that you've learned personally?
Hit the record button.
That's an important one. That's very important. Don't forget to hit record. And if you're really smart, hit 2 or 3 record buttons, just in case.
And the biggest red button is not always the record button.
Maybe the hangout.
That's true.
Well, yeah, and it seems like the best material sometimes is always the 2 or 3 minutes before you hit the record button. So it's one of those things, as soon as you're ready, just hit it, and then we tend to get some of the best, just when we crack each other up, and half the time we're like, damn, we really should have
recorded that. Yeah.
So it's just go. Just hit the record and then just start talking.
I've got a small archive of stuff that we haven't released yet before we start actually going on our show. And I'm going to save that for the Patreons. And that's probably something we're going to do.
Here's your bonus material.
Yeah.
We actually started asking our guests if they would stay on after we said, okay, that's the end of the show. And we're just sort of kicking back and talking and letting the tape go. And we've actually recorded some of those and put them up for specials. Because we just have this stuff that comes out that didn't come out during the show, and you're like, what? So.
Yeah, and as far as lessons go, I think one of the, for me, it's not an editing thing or making sure we're sounding good or doing whatever. As three white guys, middle-aged, on a podcast, we make a really cognizant choice to kind of dovetail into what Subrina was saying, to have guests on that are not us.
Yeah.
So we shoot, women, LGBT community, trans, anything we can do to avoid having another white guy on as a guest, we kind of go out of our way to do it. And it's been so awesome over these last few years that we've been doing this to hear all of these other perspectives and what they're thinking and how they're analyzing, like even an episode from 30 years ago. And like, I really wish they would have done this, or I wish they would have handled this like this. And getting to talk with them before and after we're done recording, and like, oh, so what do you think about Disco or Strange New Worlds or how things are being done now? And getting those perspectives to get out of the eyes of a middle-aged white guy, it's really been amazing. And it feels like, at least for me, it's drawn me closer to the Trek community and like the diversity that we have as a community. And it's been really eye-opening, and it's been really good. It's really self-fulfilling. I've really gotten a lot out of it.
And I do feel like one of the biggest things we've learned going through and doing this is that you can get into the minutiae and the details and the sound effects and exactly how the audio sounds and how long is it going to be and all those details. But the really important thing is if you want to make a podcast, just pick something you love, something that you're passionate about, and that'll show through, even if the audio is not perfect or it doesn't have fancy sound effects or it's a little longer than you think it should be or you don't release as often as you think you should. Like, that you just enjoy it and people can tell.
Yeah, and even if there's 20 other podcasts out there that are the same format that you're kind of going for, just do it. Your perspective, your thoughts, everything that you have to contribute to the community, it's not going to be like anybody else's. So you may look at it and be like, oh, well, that sounds like what I want to do, so maybe it kind of pushes you off or turns you off to doing it. And you have to break that mindset and just hit the record. The speaking will come, the editing will come. You'll get a better mic. Everything will come in time. It's just getting that first time, pushing the button, and going.
What's unique about it is you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Don't take criticism personally.
1,000.
That's very important. That goes along with don't look at the YouTube comments.
Yes.
It's not about you. It's always about someone else's perspective and projection. And to be confident in who you are. As we said, your voice is a unique perspective.
Don't compromise it.
Don't compromise. Put yourself out there. Be receptive to criticism and to improvement because we're always bettering ourselves.
Yeah.
But be confident in what you're putting out there. Don't second guess yourself because some idiot on the internet made a mean comment. Unfortunately for me, as my social media presence continues to grow, I get more and more, and I get more of that as a non-binary woman than you guys do. I've been the only woman guest on a podcast, and I think I said that the actor who played Charlie X was kind of funny looking. And got attacked for that by the male listeners of the podcast. And it was just really unexpected, but I felt terrible for my friend's podcast. Because apparently they lost some listeners because I said Charlie X wasn't looking.
Alicia.
You know what though?
Yeah.
You know what though? I kind of agree.
Don't let the door hit you where the Big Bang split you. Yeah.
But yeah, it's so important to be confident in who you are. You are an incredible person, and self-love is so important no matter what, whether you podcast or not. And you don't have to have a podcast to have a voice in fandom. Just add your voice because I love hearing other voices. I love hearing other valuable perspectives that help change the way that I think not only about Star Trek, but about the world around me.
Yeah, and if you want to taste without doing your own thing, find a show that you like. Reach out to them. Hey, I really liked blah, blah, blah that you guys did. Would it be possible to join you guys for an episode? I really like talking about Trek. Whatever, reach out if you don't want to take that full commitment of starting your own show and going through it. Guest on a podcast or two, see what it's like, get a feel for recording and prepping and doing everything that it takes before you make that jump.
And don't Well, we do have limited time. We're going to do a Q&A and giveaway in the hallway outside because we are bookended with another
Yeah, I think we're trying to
panel
Do we have
coming
a
up.
couple
I think Jeff
questions?
may
If
call an
you,
audible here.
we can squeeze some in. I'm down with it.
But the last thing is just don't be afraid to be terrible. I think easily our first
be bad.
50 episodes
They'll be
we
bad.
think are horrible, and we've had people come to us and go, "Those are so good. They're our favorite episodes." And we go, "Why? Those are so bad." We had no idea what we were doing.
I think another thing that if you're really seriously thinking about doing podcasting, and you want to figure out like what's your format going to be, like what are my things going to be, but it doesn't come in the first few podcasts, and once you get to like 8 or 9 or 10, you start to find your rhythm and your voice. I mean, we have 4 women on our podcast, so the crosstalk in the first episode was just like hellacious.
That's these
to
two.
the point where you start to realize how to do that, and things come. The show, we have like things we say now that people know we're going to say. I've had people say it back to us, because if I say, if you're listening, I know people are going to say. So it takes a while. It comes organically while you're doing the podcast. You can't, I'm going to have a bad phrase, or I'm going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. It just never happens like that. So just record, hit the record button, and make sure you get past the 10th show. Get past the 10th show, you're good to go.
There's a saying in writing: you can't edit an empty page. It's kind of the same idea. Get it down, start doing it, then you can tweak it. But you got to have something to tweak before you can tweak it.
If anyone does have any questions, you want to come down,
Yeah, feel
by all
free.
means, we will squeeze you.
Yeah, I didn't mean to exclude.
You don't, no. Well, so kind of tying into that, how do you feel that your show, if you have your own show, or your style being on podcasts has changed from when you first started it until now?
Well, I know we did a thing where we were just free form talking the entire show. And then we said, you know what, people are getting confused because we're bouncing around the episode we're talking about. So we said, we'll just talk it act by act. And that made a whole lot more sense. Then it made it easier to take notes and figure out what you're going to say and talk about. And everyone brings their own little thing to each little section. It's a little bit more organized. So that works pretty well for us.
It's funny, we were the opposite. At the beginning, Jeff would be like, "Okay, so this happens." And we're like, "Oh, I like that." And then this happens. And that's bad. And this happens. And then we're like, "Okay, no, we just need to bar talk, bounce around. We'll hit what we need to."
The problem is with ours, we'll take and get excited and start talking about something that happened later, and then it was like, hold on, next section.
Oh no, we do that. We just do it. We talk about it.
We backtrack all the time. Yeah. It's just how it goes.
Podcasting has really empowered me to be me. It's given me a lot of confidence in myself. It's hurt my confidence at times. But it's putting out my voice and then hearing feedback from people in the world that said, you encouraged me to do this, or, I went and watched this a second time and now I think a little bit differently about it. It's a really powerful thing to know that you're putting yourself out there into the world and the people are receptive and supportive. And so, starting off, you're kind of afraid to put your voice out, maybe. At least for me, I was always very, very nervous, and then didn't want to listen to myself, didn't want to cringe.
Yeah.
And now I'm really eager to speak to the world. I like doing it. It's so much fun, and it is so fulfilling, and kind of keeps me doing more. And wanting to share and hopefully inspire more of you to connect with other fans and podcast or do meetups, whatever you want to do. But yeah, it's a really empowering experience.
I must admit, as the introvert type, to do a podcast and come in and talk in front of people, it's one thing to work in radio and go, oh, that was Elton John, and now here's the next one from Celine Dion, at 3 o'clock in the morning when I was working in radio. But to talk to people, and have a conversation naturally and feel comfortable doing it. After podcasting it, let's talk about Star Trek. Oh, I can talk about Star Trek. I love Star Trek.
That's easy. We go for hours.
It's very helpful to get better at being a person that can communicate.
I think the thing that's developed for us is that we have learned to be better interviewers. So that was something that when we started, we were doing recaps, and then we kind of mixed the shows up. So we have some recap shows, and we have some weird shows that we did I think that might be fun. Then we started getting guests, and that was sort of like, oh my God, so what are we going to ask them? So that became something that we really worked on, and learning how to listen to what the guest is saying back to you. Not just like, okay, go talk, guest, and you got your next question and you didn't even hear what they said. But so I think a lot of people have you're really nervous to develop that skill. And it is a skill. I mean, there's a lot to doing a podcast. And I think one of the other things we really learned is that we've got to have a host. Like one of us has to corral the other three. So we have that host that is like keeping us on time. You know, I know I'm the researcher. You know, we got our little things that we do in this. So Tamia, if you're listening, I know you are, girl. We miss you. And Fran is always coming in with the other, the boom boom. And so it helps. You develop your style, your speed, and you get these other skills. And we work at it. We read stuff. Really, we're studying up on this. So it's just coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I have about 2 minutes. So let's do this. Remind everyone where people can find you and whatever shows you're on and social media. So I want people to be able to find you and interact with all of your stuff. Whoever wants to go first.
So again, my name is Heather Ray. You might know me as Batleth Babe. That's where you can find me on Twitter. And then I just finished being a guest on Mission Log Live with the Roddenberry Network. And there's apparently maybe more for me to come with the Roddenberry Network at some point, but I don't know what. So stay tuned.
That's exciting. I'm Rocky. Starfleet Underground's the show, and usually this is the part where I put in the pre-recorded thing at the end of the show. It says Starfleet Underground. Go to www.starfleetunderground.com, and then Twitter, we're Starfleet under G, and also on Instagram. So yeah.
And I'm Subrina Wood again, and SyFy Sisters. We have our website, SyFysisters.com. You can also find us on the Twitter. And and we're on Instagram and Facebook as SyFy Sisters.
And you're with the Trek Geeks Network.
TrekGeeks.com.
Yes.
How do you spell SyFy?
SyFystas.
We've got the nerd.
Do our thing, David.
I'm not doing the whole wrap up. Am I doing the wrap up?
No,
I can't do the whole wrap up. Go to thenerdtrek.com. You can check out our Nerd Trek podcast that we have going on, 300 plus episodes. Individually, we started at the very beginning of TOS. We're just going into DS9, so we've done all of them individually. A lot of bulk there. We're branching out into multiple podcasts. We finished recording an Amen to Misbehave one where I'm doing to them what they did to me. I made them watch Firefly in the movie, and we're talking about it on there. We've got a movie club one coming out, 10-minute expert. We have an acting captain one. We're kind of exploding as a network right now. So check out the site, nerdtrek.com. Everything you need to know is there.
Yeah, that links to all of our socials and everything. You guys can find us there.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We do appreciate it. And I swear, I have a bunch of swag and shirts. If you want to look through it, it's free. I'm giving it away because I don't want to take it home. So there. So,
And we'd love to talk with everyone.
If you have questions or anything, feel free.
We'll be in the back or just outside. Feel free, come talk, questions, everything.
So just ladies and gentlemen, while we have this esteemed group of panelists on stage, I've been listening to every word you all have been saying about everything. And I just want to say that as a newcomer to the podcasting field myself, everything you said is so true. Just start doing it. Start doing it. If you think that someone else is doing it, they're not doing it the way you're doing it. My podcast, which I just started doing a year and a half ago, is Enterprise Incidents. It's a deep dive. Thank you. It's a deep dive into TOS. All right. So, but my partner on the podcast, Steve Morris, he hosts a movie podcast that I've guested on many times, and he knew that I was a big Star Trek fan. He's a big Star Trek fan. So for like 3 years, he said, "You and I should do a Star Trek podcast." And I said, "Steve, there are 1,000 Star Trek podcasts. By my count, 1,000. And I just went, come on, like, what are we going to do that's different? So for 3 years, he kept every once in a while saying, we really should do it, you really know your stuff, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, but so the other people who are doing their own Star Trek podcasts. So what he finally said to me that won me over was literally that when I talk about Star Trek, and I say this as an introvert, I come to life. That when I talk about Star Trek with so much passion and love, That is, and I hate to use this word during a pandemic, but it's infectious. Okay, so this guy said, you know, when you talk about Star Trek, you obviously love it. Everybody picks up on that. You're known in Star Trek fandom as being a lifelong fan and all that. And if you have something to say about Star Trek, people will listen. So, but ultimately, what we decided, our angle on TOS is that we had been looking at the original series, episode by episode, but in production order, not air date order. Right, and the reason for that is because you can track the evolution of the show, the evolution of the characters, and more importantly, and this is really what gave us our mission statement, is that you can treat the series like it actually is serialized, and it works. And we've had so many responses from so many people who say, you've made me see TOS in a whole new light. And to hear that from lifelong fans is a beautiful thing. And for each one of you who gets a great reaction from your podcasts, no one's doing it the way you're doing it. And keep doing what you do. And thank you so much for doing what you do and for being on this panel. Thank you so much. If you have a Star Trek podcast you want to start on your own, do it. Do it. And you'll figure it out and find your way. You will figure it out. You will find your way. And right now, coming up next on our stage here, this is going to be an interesting conversation about patents in Star Trek. Hang on one second. Hi, are you? Bob, I'm going to introduce you